Hi everyone, welcome back into the studio. We're doing some quick studies. Today will be a little bit longer of a quick study because I'm going to try some new things. I have it's 11 inches this way, 14 inches this way. This is a Timberwolf that I got the picture from Adobe Stock, which I really like, and I've cropped off some of him just to do a head study here. So that's what we're going to do. It's a little bit smaller. It's about the size of my hand here. So it should come out pretty neat. We should be able to do it under 2 hours without any kind of problem. I want to get faster at these, and I want to get a little bit more alla prima and stuff, which means some major big brush marks that John Singer Sargent used to always say. He always said, try to put in any kind of color passes, which is larger brush as you possibly can. So this is something that I practice. You don't always see him practice, so I thought I'd film a practice for you, okay, so you can see how we're going to do it. But then I'm going to also turn it into a painting as well. But I'm going to try some new things. Okay, so 11 by 14, I gave it a coat of the Canvas Prep Medium, sanded it with 180 grit sandpaper, and then put my sketch on. And over here I have my this is my regular palette that I like to use here, for these types of stuff. This is Dave's Favorites, 10 colors. I will put the listing of everything that I use in the video's description below. Okay, I have some extender medium. This is what I'm going to start the painting with. This keeps the paint a little bit thinner and it slows down the drying time. I also have out some Diarylide open medium. If you're not painting with this and you're painting with acrylics, you need to be painting with this because that stuff is fantastic. Gives it a nice thickness, a slipperiness to the acrylic, and it slows its drying time way down. Okay, so let's get going. So the first thing I'm going to do is, I love this kind of a brown, it's a real tone, it's a little cooler, brownish kind of cast behind him. The thing is that he's white, okay, but he's a little dirty white here, but he's white and my board is white. So I'm going to pre-tone my canvas. You don't see, or my board, you don't see me do this too often, but I'm going to take down one of the colors that I do have out here is a medium beige. I'm going to cool it with a little bit of the blue, maybe a touch of the burnt sienna to keep it over to the orange side just a bit here. And that cools down this gray. You can see it. You can see the difference here temperature wise. It's a little bit cooler, right? So, and let's add some extender medium to this. I'm going to lightly wash this, cool it down. I don't want to cool it down too much because I want to paint him warmer. As a matter of fact, I think I'll use this water. I'm going to use a big brush. But it is one of the things that I used to teach as a paint chemist. I was a paint chemist for years, still kind of am, but colorist for many, many years, is that we always know that it is far easier to cool a warm than it is to warm a cool. Now, you can still do it, but without having to go too opaque. That's the ticket. So I don't want to get this too cool to begin with. So it'll overall to him, so I'm going to pre-tone this here, and put a light coat of it over the whole thing. And I use water. Now, as the water starts, and we'll poke it up underneath there, my little clips there. So as the water starts to soak in a little bit, and it starts to dry up a bit, I'll just pinch wipe my brush. And this is the sign of a really good acrylic, guys, is that you can do this as the acrylic is drying and it does not bead up on you or go away. You just get this nice, it doesn't tear a hole or do anything right here. And this is one reason why I love the Canvas Prep. I like all that. You see, it gives this even toning throughout everything there. And it doesn't tear a hole. If you're using an acrylic that has a lot of vinyl and stuff in it, and there's a vast majority of them do, you'll tear holes in it as you start working it. So this puts on a nice tone, a nice cooler tone, and it'll help help him pop out. Now we can leave that tone, but I just want to show you, there's going to be some real white areas here. You can actually come back like this and start to bring him back a little bit. I don't want to do too much of this because I want to paint into the tone. There's the shadow, and here's the highlight. So I want to you could bring back some of his light. This is just something for you to think about. So right out here, we'll have some of his light. So just a little bit of water on your paper towel, and you can bring back some of his highlight areas if you want, just to show you. And, you know, part of working and practicing like this is to try new techniques and stuff. So this is an excellent technique. I used to do this in a lot of Rembrandt type of techniques, where Rembrandt painted in glazes and he would push back everything, and then he'd actually physically come back and pull out areas that he's going to continue the painting. And so it really worked well. All right. So we want, you know, with Sargent, he would always come in with some of his darker tones and then work half tones up and stuff. And I'm going to use a larger brush. I'm going to use a 3/4 inch brush. I'm going to go right over here. Matter of fact, I'll just pull some of this over. That was a beautiful tone. I'm going to take a little bit of that medium beige, some of the blue, but some of the main colors I want to use on here is, especially onto the cool side of him, is the burnt sienna and the blue. And I want to vary this a little bit. I'm going to start out with some extender. Whenever I work shadows, I like to work them thin. That's the good rule of Alaprima. Maybe I'll touch a blue over there so I get some variation in the tone. And I'm going to actually, what I was thinking about this when I was going to do it is, I'm going to paint with a large brush first, kind of block in some of these areas, a little larger than what I normally do. And then I'm going to overpaint these areas, working half tones lighter with a little bit smaller brush. And instead of blocking in shadow areas, mid-tone areas, and half-tone areas like we've done before. So what I want to do is I want to first compress this side of his face, so right up over here, so it starts to immediately start to give him some dimension here. So a little darker and stuff than what I might normally do, and I'm going to work fairly quickly, lift some of this pressure up here, and we'll blur some of this back. See, this background's already dry. Isn't that nice? When you work with that water like that, and so we can come in and work with that pretty quickly, see? Now, we watch. So here I see the brush marks that pulling back this way. That's good. We can see that. Then in the up here, you can see it goes more sideways here. And now the tone is going to get a little lighter. So I'm going to grab a little bit of my beige and my white right here. So I can use water or extender. Extender makes it really easy to do. And let's just pull in some this way, pull in some this way. Maybe some of these come out so we have that. So you can see that side of his face. Let's take some of that soft right in here just a bit. That'll soften out some of that shadow. Here, pull some of that out. That's going to work out pretty nice. And it's, again, this is your first look. We have a bit of this going right up over his eye. We'll put that in more specifically later. But let's get some of that burnt sienna now a little bit towards the burnt sienna side. So you can see the burnt sienna side, as opposed to having more of the blue, it's still slightly cool and nice and deep and dark. That's perfect. Let's maybe just a touch of blue. Deeper right in there. Let's push that right into his ear. Right in there, maybe pull some of that out just a bit. There. And let's come right in here to the mid part, right in here into the middle of this ear. Touch that out a bit. Work as, and I tend, or I want to work pretty fast. So I'm in here, so I see that. Now I see it go more yellow, almost orangish kind of a tone. So we'll pick up a little yellow, a little bit of the burnt sienna. You could cool it if it is off just a little with just a touch of your other color, your cool color there. Let's just add some of that in there. Remember, this is our first real quick look here at him, right? So, yeah, now let's get some, let's go back in there with a little more dark to set that ear in there, right? And let's take maybe a small bit of the light and some of this right in there. We'll set that. Try to follow as much as you can, his calligraphy, where you see his calligraphy there. That works pretty good. Now, let's just that's a pretty darn good color. Let's keep that with just a little cooler, and let's just put in some big marks right out through here, which is going to be the side of him here going in. So it's just establishing. And like I do when I do birds and stuff, let's get just a touch of that again. And a little bit of our cool. Like I do birds and stuff like that, I like to look for the undertone. So I'm looking underneath his fur to what I'm seeing, and we'll put some of these other colors and stuff into him. But this is beautiful coloring on him, that warm and that cool. And it's overstated slightly, but that's okay. We can work with that. Let's just push in a little bit of this right over here. We're going to let this go very much alla prima out, and stuff over here. Maybe just a few marks here like that. Okay. Now a little cooler. You can see it's more blue in there. So let's grab that. We'll put a little bit of the extender into that. That's a little dark, so I'll just take some of that out, just a touch dark. Let's just put a bit of the medium beige and white in that. Okay, so we'll get that a touch warmer, little bit of the, so we have the nice cool where it's a burnt sienna and blue, the warmer over here burnt sienna and yellow, and I'm just kind of mixing them up to kind of get the undertone of him here. And I'm working kind of fast. We want to work fast. Now the reason why you work fast is because it keeps you from playing. So you read the direction of the fur. I'm reading this across his nose here. You read the direction of the fur. You try to put it in. And then we work from there. A little warm right here on the corner of his mouth, right there. Maybe right here where the front is transitioning around there. We'll put some thin wash, a little softer right up through here in his ear. Here. It would be easier to do it with a small brush, but then what happens, and I think what Sargent is really trying to do is you make these quick statements because it keeps you from making repetitive marks. And repetitive marks are really kind of bad. Let's beige and white right into some of this. And we'll put some of that browner tone right up here, right up around his, maybe down this side here. And again, I'm using just points and edges of the brush here, but I'm following kind of his fur, the angles of his fur here. So we'll paint all of this after we get him set up. We'll give him more fur and more fun stuff, because I'll restate some of this stuff, because I do want to have a nice finished portrait. And he is a little bit more complicated than I really wanted to do as a practice for something like this, but he is just such good looking animal that I just had to do him. So let's put a little bit of that light. Let's get that a little lighter right up here. So I'm working not with any open medium yet, just the extender. The open medium will make beautiful fur. That's what I use to make the fur. And but I'm not there yet. I'm color blocking him really here. So we'll put some light, some of this down here. Color blocking him more than anything else. And let's get some of this nice light now. We'll push this in. So we don't want to go as light as we see yet. Okay, and we'll just pull over some of that shadow. we want to keep it a value or so lower than what we see, so we have some room to fur him up and do some stuff with him as well. But he's starting to come. You start to see him a little bit here, right? So here we go. And let's just get a few more little marks here. There. And a little softer gray. Medium beige is beautiful. And medium beige is such a nice warm neutral. So, and you can adjust it with that burnt sienna and the blue really easy. So we'll get that. With Alaprema, you go in and make these specific little marks, you know, and it works so very well. I love the way it works. But I'm working just with extender, so this is really thin, and this is what I want right now, to keep this thinness to it. A nice warm here, some light, medium beige here. There we go. Just get some of the suggestions of that fur. This is big brush, so I'll come inside of this. Once I get that kind of established, I'll come inside of that and work the fur. This gives me some benchmarks of some colors that I'll be using in these areas. That's what I was thinking about here, why I'm doing it this way. And I want that up there to pull up a bit here like it does on him here. So there, that's good. Now let's look at something here. So I've got that. Now I could go in there and put in his face, some of his nose and stuff, but and I might you could do that. And one thing that I do, because his nose is one of the darkest areas on him, so I'm just going to go in and just suggest this real quick. Just some some burnt sienna and some blue. And make it kind of a dark. Not, you can still see it. I know it's hard with the monitor, and with the camera and stuff. But there's still a slight, you might be able to see the difference here. It's really cold to here. It's still warm. Remember, it's easier to cool a warm than to warm a cool, and I still live by that quite a bit. So I will, and I'm just going to go right through his nostril. So this is some of the darkness. I'm going to want to have a little more darkness to that, coolness to that when I paint, but I'm going to leave it slightly warmer. We'll leave a light little edge here as we pull down and right down into his lip area here. Right in there. I'm going to take just a little bit. He has the slightest little light that you see right up there. See that? And so I want to capture that as well here, and that's good. Here we go. Here we go, just like that. And if you hear the snoring, it's not me. It's my lab is right underneath. It's me, and she is just out. Some of you watch all my videos. You know my labs are always in here. And yesterday and I was filming, and I put up the video. My granddaughter's dogs were running around behind me and everything. So, yeah, I used to, when I first started, that's just a little bit cooler. When I first started filming, I always thought, I got to be super professional and got to do this. And, I've made over 5,000 video lessons now that we have out in all different kinds of areas. And in the 25 years we've been doing these types of videos, and and I used to want to be so professional. Now it's like, this is my life. Okay, this is my life, and hopefully all of you understand. I'm mostly retired now from all these years, but I still have a lot of fun making these videos with you guys. So I'll put that little bit of cool in there. So that gives me a real good idea there. So I got a real good idea of light and dark on him there. Right, so I'm going to take let's take some of our burnt sienna and some of our blue here this little bit of cooler, slightly darker. I love this look right around him. And so I want to try to capture some of that, maybe a little softer to begin with. So maybe the medium beige will soften, gray that out just a bit. Okay, let's try some of this. And let's just try this right down. You know, we might end up, one of the prettiest colors I love to use with animals is the blue. So we might end up with some of the blue and stuff here as well. But I wanna come in, capture that edge of him here. And this is just the first look. We're gonna do a heck of a lot more. But I wanna capture this alla prima edge here. And which will go back and forth here. But this keeps that a little bit darker. Here's a little different color. And right there. There we go. And some of this. I love the, you know, the strong verticals and horizontals. That's the first look at it. We're going to do more. So, and I'll probably put, you know, I got this just a little high right here. So a real good dark right up there to counter some of that would be good too. So let's just beige, and I'm using just extender right now. So let's just push a little bit. I'll redraw that angle right there. Here. There we go. That will give us a little bit of this, and we'll just wipe right out. Sometimes I'll use my paper towel to wipe right out so we get that. And see, you can you imagine we're going to go a little darker in here. That's going to look so great, I think, in popping him out here. Some of that look. And let's take this just a little softer, a little further out here. But I'm going to leave it because he's in the forest, so I'll leave. Many times when I do portraits and stuff, I smear it back and forth, and I'll use an X motion. He's in the forest, and in the forest you see a lot of strong verticals because of the trees and some horizontals and stuff for the branches and stuff. So I just might leave some strong verticals and horizontals in there, just like that, to emulate some of that forest right like that. So that might work pretty well. So that works. Isn't that kind of cool? And you know, if you do it, and you can think about it. Okay, so I could do it more with a burnt sienna, maybe, and then cool it slightly and take a second stroke of that, something like that. But all of that works really well. So now we got a good kind of a setup of him. I want to go in, and one of the things I like to do that I've learned over time, and there's a lot of artists that believe that one of the first things you start with is the eyes. I don't necessarily do that. Sometimes I do. Like I say, I like to try all kinds of stuff. But the eyes, and so they set the eyes, and then they do the rest of the painting to work with those eyes. And so I'm going to come in, and his eyes mostly are in shadow. They've got this kind of yellowish look to them, which I love to set the eyes brighter than what they are, and then I like to paint it down. So one of my favorite colors to use is, believe it or not, it'll make real glowy eyes here, but the Diarylide Yellow. It's a semi-transparent, glowy kind of yellow, and then I'll be able to paint this back into position. For years, I was a Dutch painter, and we would paint a real glow underneath and then put it back, push it back. So we'd start a lot of the paintings up with a real, almost a vermilion orange, a real bright orange, and then we'd paint it back. Now, I'll take just a little bit of that. We'll whisper some of that out a little further away, a few hits of that, because I just don't use it anyway. Otherwise, his eyes would be just really glowy. And I have him real big right there so I can really see some of those colors. And when I look at the real big part of him back there, I actually see some of that glow right up in here into that yellow there. There'll be little touches of that glow that we might want to add to other parts up here. Now, if I was just like a real quick study, some of this ear, you know, it's pretty darn good looking. You might consider it done. That's the idea of the study, is try to get as close as you can, quickly and as simplistically as you can. But I'm gonna start him all out as a study. I think this is becoming a really good study here, especially as I get the details into the first part of the eyes. But I'm going to take it into a painting, like I said, because I have a couple people that are really interested in the wolf. So we'll see. So I'll take it up a little bit more finished than what I planned, because some of the comments said, I'm really, really looking forward to the wolf. I hear you. So we'll do him up a little bit more than what I was planning. So let's go with some burnt sienna. So this is the brush I'm using is a little number 2 Fusion Filbert, one of my favorite detail brushes with painting animals and stuff. And so I'm slightly on the burnt sienna side, but with a little bit of blue to help cool it down. And we'll tap in here, right in here into his tear duct channel, a little bit here, just kind of keeping arched right here to his eye. That's very important, because if you get it too straight, he'll get angry. And then we'll put a wider track underneath his eye there, okay? Do not cut that eye across, he'll get angry, okay? And he's not angry, he's a sweet-looking guy. So we'll keep this kind of curved. This is dangerous because it's a little straight, but so I'm going to angle it just a bit here. And then we'll widen this whole part right up here. Widen that just a bit. That's setting the deeper part of his socket. Now we'll pick up some more blue. We'll darken that down even more. And we'll come in smaller, right up by the eyeball itself, right up over here by the eyeball. Some of that dark. Little bits up here into the corner. Where do you see that dark? And I look over there at the other part. Look over at the photo. I mean, that real big one. That's really where I like to look. And it's going to be right here into the corner of his eye. Right in there. And that's really going to make him kind of evil with that glowy eye. But we'll set it back. As soon as this Diarylide dries, I'll show you how we set it back. Now, transitional. So this right up here, this is what we would consider a transitional halftone. So I've got the lighter tone. There's a lighter tone there. There's a light tone here, and then this is a transitional tone that sits halfway between the shadow color I have here and the light color I have here. So I know I've got to make that tone that's right in there. Sometimes it helps you. You go find your value scale. That's going to be right around a 7, 7.2. And so with acrylics, you've got to lighten it up almost to an 8. I'm going to warm it up. Let's use a little beige. I'm going to change this tone several times because I paint it several times. But we're going to want to go up right around an 8. And that's going to get pretty close there. So let's put this transitional tone here. A little yellow, a little burnt sienna here, and some beige and some white. Let's cool it. Now we just gray it over here. Darken it down a little bit so you can see the two tones here. And let's put that in right up. Ooh, don't get too straight. Here. Let's just push that right up over here. Right up over onto that one. Right there. And almost got that too straight. It's very close. I'm going to probably push some shadow back in there again. Just to just to fix up his eye there just a bit. I don't want him to get too angry yet. Okay. And a little bit here. There we go. Round that up just a bit. That'll sink into the socket as soon as I put that softening bit of the eyeball gets a upper eye, what we call an upper eyelid shadow of it. I'm just going to push these back just a little bit with that shadow now. just back into place, just a bit. They can go down again, but that's good for right now. Let's take some burnt sienna and some blue, which is the darker. Get rid of some of the, sometimes I just rinse my brush out, so I got to get the water out of there. Otherwise the water tracks up towards the ferrule, comes down when you're doing detailed and causes everything to bleed out. You want to work with a pinch, I call pinch wipe your brush out on your paper towel. Why I always carry a paper towel in my hand. Maybe a little violet and a nice purpley kind of color here. This will be the pupil of the eye here. We'll touch that in. It's the eyelid is just eclipsing it right here and right here. I tell you, it's a lot easier to see him up on that big one there. How big that pupil really is, which is quite big across the top of his eye there. There we go. And we'll fix out some of it. Got a little bit of a light spot there. Got to get rid of. A little more. But I can, now that I'm softening out that Diarylide, I can take the Diarylide with just a little bit of this cool color and tap that back in there to get rid of that light spot slightly. Here. We'll work those all again. But that's getting closer for him. A little bit more shadow. I'm going to come back in here, work this shadow around his eye again one more time. Right up, maybe a touch more blue into that. Right up here. Deepen that a bit. Let's lighten that ever so lightly, maybe even a little beige into that. Nice grade color right here, and we'll push that side of the eye in there. And it comes down on this side of the muzzle, ever just a little bit. That's going to push that muzzle back. Here. There we go. Just like that. So you see just a bit of it. See it right there? That little tone that's right there. That's so important to the expression, to his expression. And it's not an angry expression. It's an inquisitive expression here. He's very inquisitive about what's happening here. So we have that. Let's take it slightly lighter. Just a little bit warmer, and we'll put the mark underneath his eye here. Some of that can pull down right there. Let's thin this out with some extender. We're almost ready. We can start painting with some open medium here in a minute. Let's soften out put some of this shadow that's going to be right back here, the undertone. Here, right in there, and then let's come in with a little bit of the light here. Yes, and right here, down that side there. Here we go, and we need to. Little bit of this gray. We need to soften these lines here. Just drag over into that shadow there. Into that mark around his eye. That keep these edges here real broken and soft, and that softens his look here. This line right here is a little too straight. And these are all things that you practice, and. And I love to do this because, one of the things when I have this and I'm working, touch that once too many, got a little bit of light in there. But these kind of paintings right here are really, really good to help you with your observational skills. And, observational skills are things that, where you're going to get edges and stuff like that correct, right? And let me set this up and be a little more careful here. And observational skills are what, how close you are in capturing an image. So, these are all things that you can practice right now with this painting. how close can you get this image to it without, you know, like super copying. I don't super copy, but I want to capture the expression and stuff of this guy. And so, and it's a matter of light and dark, and can I get those in where I want to? So there's a little bit more dark. So I start out a little lighter, and then I go in a little darker here. And, you know, with the first go around like this, I try to come pretty close. And if I need to, I will come back and paint some areas again. Sometimes it might be you know, there's a lot of artists that do it, and I never really was, and except for the last couple of years, yeah, I'll put it away for a little bit, especially if I'm painting this, and it's a painting to sell. I'll put it away for a little bit, and I'll come back in a week and look at it and see, is there anything else I need to do? So there I've just put a little more dark into that, and I like that. So now let's go in, we'll put the undertone in, and we'll start to build this part of his face, which will then control the rest of our painting, okay? So let's do that. And so let's take some extender first with our undertone. We're going to get this kind of a grayish, warm kind of undertone here. And we'll push that in here. And we'll come back. We're not done with that at all. We'll put some of this up over. Let the edges, I'm a painter of edges, so I'll take some of this warm tone up over some of that yellow that I put in there earlier. Let's warm just a bit because, you know, and especially right over there, observational skills. I see just a touch of the warmer color happening right in there. I know, and I put it on pretty heavy, and you go, well, that's pretty heavy, Dave. Yeah, you're right. But I know white's coming, and white will tend to opaque out and take some of that out. So put it in a little heavier. Let's go white with a little bit of beige in that. Now, let's add some open medium to this. The open medium, about an equal amount, almost an equal amount of open medium. The open medium, got a little too much in my brush. The open medium here will make it slippery, but it'll also give us real quick look to the fur. See how that just slides over real easy. And I want, like I said, I want to try to do it with as large a brush as possible, making some marks, and then we can come in and add in some smaller detail marks later on. So I'll try that. We'll tap up into some of this using just a corner of this 3/4 inch brush here. Let's pick up a little bit more white right in with that. And I'll look, and it's going to be right in this area. Let's see if I can get some nice thick marks, thicker marks there. And a little bit up over his eye, down this side here. Some of that here. And see, I can push it. This is one reason why I love that I can use these acrylics with my hands because they're non-toxic, but I love to push that. A little open medium. Let's go a little softer here. A little bit of gray, beige into that. Okay. And a little softer right there. There's, we get some of that right up in there. Now, I want to fix, I do want to fix, because I see this and he's getting angry. And he's like, Dave, I don't look like this. So I'm going to take my little tube. See that rule? It's opened up a little bit more and it's a little bit straight right there. And so this angle I have here isn't the gentle arch that I told you about that we had to preserve here. So I want to come back and open that arch up just a bit here and close it down with some of my beige and some of this dark down this side here just a bit. Close that down. That'll make him just a little softer, friendlier here. I used to teach expressions, how to paint expressions, and for years, and show people how to, the simple marks on the face and stuff to create expressions. And I was always thinking, well, maybe I should film something like that again. Be kind of fun to do. Let's put that, this one is a little too small of a brush that I want to use. So I'm going to go, this is my number 6 or an 8 here. And I want to grab that mark here a little bit more. Soften that out right there like that. That's that. So we want that softer edge. He's really soft, and he's got a couple of little marks of little hair and stuff that crosses down. That is what really softens his expression here. And on this side, that I thought maybe I could sneak that in there, but it's a little too light. So let me go back and darken that just a bit. There we go. Just a few little marks. There we go. Right in like that. Some of that open medium with some of this. And we can push in some, this little 8, this is a, well, it's hard to tell. I got paint all right over where it is. It's an 8. This is a perfect size for painting this in there. And I'll come back with some burnt sienna, some blue, a little medium beige here, right? Some yellow into this. We'll push open medium into this now. It'll stay wet. Now I can come in here and work some of these colors again here in this area. Beige, whites. Work this here. And some of these colors will curve here. This is the starting some of the marks for the fur, building it up a bit. You can, or if you can't use your finger, you just take your brush, we'll hold it flat. This will flatten out the front part of his nose there, right? Little bits of light here, just a few little hairs here that put the hair on this side right up towards the front there, right in there, and some more gray or more beige and gray here, coming back up this way. Slowly getting into that white, and everything that I'm painting from now on, I'm going to be mixing in some open medium so I get this. See the fur look to it? That's the highs and lows of the strokes that open medium adds so easily, because it gives it a kind of like a transparency to it. And I can push it and work that transparency there. Let's get some of this gray and light, some of this gray right up through here, right up like that, there, and we'll pull some of this out here. That's a little more burnt sienna, a little bit more burnt sienna in that. There we go. And a little bit of burnt sienna up there. I'm reading the undertone and just adjusting it a little bit, and you can pull back and forth like that to read that tone, to get that interest to that light. Get that open medium in there. Try, if you forget it in there, you might get too much of an opaque stroke, so get that in there. It helps a lot. There. Just pull some of this. There. I love that bit of heavier mark right here. And if you miss it, just restate some light, some shadow, and just do it again. That's all you have to do. But I'm going to build this with some heavier paint there. And see how what I did is I started it flat and then I rolled over to one edge to drag that edge a little bit further down, heavier. So you can use the corners and edges of your brush here if you want to come back in. Now, if you get it too light, let me put some of this on here. Swirl, follow those swirls of his fur, right? See how it kind of curls right there, right? Now, so, you know, the odds are you're getting it once. Boy, if you get it once and it looks pretty good, you got lucky, or you've been doing this a lot, so you know exactly what you're looking for. But if you're like me, you know, sometimes you put that in there and you go, "Whoa, I missed that." Well, then you back paint with shadow. So we'll take some burnt sienna, some blue, some medium beige. We'll create a gray undertone here that's right in that area that I want, right? And I'll use this to back paint through my lights till I get, and I'll go back and forth. Sometimes you go to a smaller brush, but try not to. Let's try to paint Sargent with as large a brush as possible to get that look, right? Make sure you have that open medium in there. And drag, sometimes set that brush down because it fans the hairs out and you get a little different look. Now that's a little too lined for him, so I will bring some of it together by using more of the tip of the brush. The tip of the brush will soften it. And how do you know this? Because I practice quick paintings using different parts of the brush. Use different parts of your brush. Here's some gray, beautiful grayer color right in there. Let that come up over his eye here a bit, right like that, right? And softer little tone right up in there. There we go. That looks pretty good. We need to soften this up here a bit. Get that fur look back in there, right? Some gray. Let's head out a little more gray. So increase the blue slightly here. White, blue. So open medium, light gray, right out here. Right out through here. Get that gray, cooler color in that side of him right there, right? Let's increase the size. If it's too blue, add just a touch of the burnt sienna in there. Let's go a touch darker. I'm working the deeper colors right in here. There's a nice deep color, cool color right in there. That really forces that nose together up a little, you know, forward. In his face, there's a bit of dark right up here. Right up there. I like that. That dark is right in there. And we'll put some lighter gray out. Let's get just a touch lighter. And maybe we pull out. Here, there we go. Just like that. A bit of that lighter is right up here by his eye. There. That's a little too light right there. Let's back some of this off. And I need that touch darker. But you can see, can you see him kind of developing here? And right now we get that open medium in everything so that, that's a good dark. So we got that open medium there in everything so that we're getting that furring stroke here. Back and forth just a touch. There. That's good. Sometimes I will, you know, really accentuate the colors so I get more of a contrast than what he really has. And I like to do that. Let's push some of this gray around since we have it all wet with open medium. Let's push some of this gray around into other areas that we see it into shadowing areas. So we see some of it here, right in there. A little bit of it right up here between those two, right? And just a bit more burnt sienna right up in here with that gray here, right up in there. And just use the chisel of your brush here. I'm going to soften this eye angle here. Just a little bit of that gray there. And I need to bring that down. Maybe this gray would be good. Down over that eye, just a touch. And soften some of that right in there. Just drag the brush over. It'll soften some of those edges there. And that's what you need. I need that softening. Put a bit of burnt sienna right into this gray. We need to do that right in here. Soften that just a bit right in there. Back and forth with the color. See, push into them. Get rid of a harsh line. A harsh line. And that's, you know, so many people will paint with the harsh line. And if you're around the eyes and you want those eyes to be soft, you don't want them to be glary, you need to brush back and forth a little bit. Break those edges so you don't get a solid line. That's the ticket to getting a really pretty little face. And sometimes, you know, like up around the eye, it's easier to do it with the corner of a big brush here. You know, like I want to put in some of that little bit of light right in there just to soften that a bit. And sometimes it's easier to do it with a big brush than it is to do it with a small brush. So I'll go back and forth several times and try things. I took too much gray right up in there. So I just want to take that out. But so maybe a little light here. And using just the corner of the brush, start some of those marks out there on his face. There we go. Now, let's see. There is a little light bluish gray right here on this side of his nostril, which is, you don't see it on there, but I do see it on, you see it on the big photo back there. So I'll look to that and I'll get this little bit of light right here that's underneath there. I love to paint the grays and the colors. Here's a gray right up here by transitional tone on his nose. Now his nose, as we paint this, it'll be a little grayer right up here as it's rounding this corner. And we'll push that little gray right there. It'll be very much purpley blue. So let's go darker, purpley blue. A little bit of burnt sienna into that. But real dark. Sometimes I'll kill the blue with a touch of green. That works really well. But it's going to make a real cold color here on this side of his nose, which is what we want. Real blue and cold. And then it transitions to that bit of a warmer gray right there. Okay? And it's hard to see on that photo, but you can see it on that monitor. So I'll put in his little nostril there, a little bit of this line down that side, right? The inside of his nostril here, we now see it. I gotta rest my hand. A little shaky, too much coffee this morning, but I kind of needed it. So you just rest your hand on something as you draw that little, it's a little comet stroke shape for his nostril, deep into his nostril there. There. And yeah, we'll push round this up and down his, this right here, boom, and then push just a little bit of this on this side down here. Yes, right like that. Okay, my phone is in there, been ringing 4 times, so I got to go answer that. Somebody may be trying to get hold of me. I will be right back. Okay, guys, I'm back. Sorry about that. Well, see, it's only a second for you, but for me, I had to go in there and talk on the phone. Yes, grandkids want Papa to bake a chicken for dinner tonight. So the grandkids are coming over for dinner. So I guess they didn't know I was filming. So anyway, sorry about the interruption, but I just love being a grandparent. Okay, so when I was coming back here, I looked at this. This line is just a little too straight. So I'm going to take a bit of dark here and just open up that just a little bit. The tiniest little bit makes a difference on him, right? And now that's just a little too curved. So I'll just tap a little bit of light here. A little bit of light. There we go. That looks pretty good. Now, let's come back in. Let's put in some of this gray. With that open medium, see, everything is still wet. Because I was gone a good 10 minutes, so everything is still wet. Let me use a small brush in here. And we'll use some of this gray, transition into this area here. And we'll push some of that in. And we can put that, the wet nose, they get this little bit of a shine. So I'm pretty close to be able to have it. I need a little bit more of a light gray. This is probably too light. Yes, that's too light. So I look for you look for the low light. This is considered the low light shine area, right on the corner of his nose there. And there's a bit of it. Usually, there's a break that it's, we called it the philtrum on a portrait here. But we'll push back in that little bit of light right there. And I love, dogs' noses are so interesting, and I love to get the colors and the tones in there. And so I'll probably put a little more burnt sienna, but let's put that little wet nose catch light right there. And it's probably a bit big. You can see it's a bit bright compared to the other. But like I always say, I like to put it in and then just touch it down into position there. Right? And while we're working with that gray catch light, let's put a little bit of gray catch light there into his eyes. And let's put just a touch more. We'll actually accentuate it a little bit onto this guy, onto that side right there. A little more than what it is. And again, I paint too big. This is how I like to do it. I paint too big. I draw that out. And then I'll tap into it here. There, to get that catch light where I want it. Right in there. There we go. Right there like that. Good. Now, let's get on, it would be like his philtrum here. We'll put a bit of the warmer, just a bit of the burnt sienna in there, because that's just such a beautiful color. So you get that burnt sienna, some blue, some gray, all of that happening down in here. And that's what's going to give you the beautiful colors here up in this area. Here, there we go. And, take your time with it, So right up in here, I could use a little warmer. So I'll go up here by the warmer bit. A bit more of the burnt sienna, which will warm it. And just drag that down this warm light side of his nose. There. And I love to take the time in with that nose and stuff. And in actual foot, it's hard to see, but in the foot, in the actual screen that I have of the large one there, his nose pokes out just a little bit right there. Just love that. And I'm going to take some of that real dark that I used at the nose and push that right into the corner of that eye, because that's right where I really want the viewer to go, right in there, right into the corner of that eye, and this one right up here as well, right in there. That'll really take them into that eye. So, you know, his eyes here are a little more compressed than what I'm painting him right in there. I like the way I'm painting him, so I'm going to leave that right in there like that. Now I'm going to go back to my 8 here, because I really like that. Back into some open medium, some of my, see how this is all still wet? Because that open medium keeps it wet, right? And let's push that little bit of light that comes underneath his nose right there that we see. And we'll pull that right down. Let that come down there like that. And let's pull this down. Right in there. And we'll put in the corners here. Right down here, we'll put in that mark. Now, see how opaque that is? I did not have enough open medium mixed in so I could get some of that transparency. So, now that I messed it up, I'm going to take some gray back with some open medium, and all I do is I repaint that, take it back out here, right? Now, this time, I'll add some white with some of that gray, and I'll put that open medium in there. And this time it'll be a lot better. See? I get that movement of the fur. Let's pull down a little heavier here. And see, that's how I do those fur marks there, right? So in some areas, I might, you know, like where we put it in before, mix up some of this open medium. We have the base already in, so we could come in here and just put in some deeper shadow, push that around, you have the open medium. Sometimes on shadow sides of the object where I want it more transparent, I will put some extender over. I've tried that. This is all good stuff to try. So like this is a great lesson for you to learn how much open medium to add to get fur strokes on there. Okay, it's a good one to do that. Now, let's take that open medium right into some of this gray here. We'll first pull down some of this mark here and see that. Look at that beautiful when that shadow is a little darker. Look at some of that mark. And now we'll do that swooping little mark right up like that. That really suggests his curvature there. And maybe a little heavier right in here again. Now, if your light doesn't show up, so if you're putting that on there and it doesn't show up, go back, because it's, you know, it's even hard to see it on that photo in there. But let's take some open medium, some yellow, some beige, a little bit of our gray here. And let's just lightly come back through here, just to break up some of that. Don't do it evenly. Break it up like this so it gets modeled like that, see? And then we'll come back with our open medium and light. We'll come right through here like we see on him, heavier right in there. That puts those strokes in right there. We'll angle this way on this side. Don't do it too much. All of a sudden you'll be back to your, right back to where you started with it too white. And we'll put a few right on the curves here. Here. Right on the curves. It gives that curvature to him there. Right? And sometimes I'll stroke from the little open medium in my yellowy gray here. Stroke out here. Some of that mark. Right? And he's a little bit more burnt sienna, and I love, this is a yellow I love to use, burnt sienna and Diarylide Yellow. Remember we used that Diarylide Yellow on the eyes and stuff. We'll use that ever so lightly right in here, and that'll get that real glow that he has right up there. A little more burnt sienna into some of that open medium so you get some of that transparency. Here. Boom, like that. Right in there. A little bit of the grayed out here. Right there. That's pretty little coloring on him. It's a little heavy, but we'll take some of our tan color here and just go through that to soften some of it. And then right on the edges up here, we'll put in, now you can tap in more of the brush to get, you know, that real mottled look if you want to have that. But I'm going to do him, I'm going to leave him pretty much alla prima stroke here. So I'll just do small little marks there and call that done on him. And follow a little bit of that, those marks there. There like that. So let's add some of that warmer marks up here. Dragging that over. And experience, you know, this is learned. This has open medium in it. So I get that nice fur look, right? That's what I'm looking for. There we go. Some more open medium here. Right like that. A little bit more light up here. And again, if I feel like I have lost, which I have right in there, that's that medium beige, a little bit of that dark. Let's just darken up some of this medium beige here. A little more, it's a little too blue, so a little burnt sienna into that. And let's come in here using just the chisel and add a bit of that in there. And we'll push that back. Some of that right back here. There we go. A little bit of that dark. There's just a touch, maybe of some yellow in there as well. So let's just add a bit of that. So you can see I can yellow that back up and then take my open medium and come right back through that. And I create those little marks of light and shadow and stuff like that, right? Works pretty well. We'll build open medium. Add that open medium. Here. Right up there like that. There we go. Like that. Little corner of the brush, a little bit of texture. I love to, and that's what I want to do more of is I'm not going to do it on him here, but I want to get some more of those textures. I want to work on those textures. So, but I thought so many of you were, when I showed you the photo of this, you really wanted it painted. So I thought, well, okay, I won't experiment too much with this. We'll paint him like we know, but there's some things I want to do with texture, and we've got to play around a little bit more. So we'll do that. We have time. But some of you really wanted to paint this guy, so we'll do that. That's a little light. So I'll just drag some color right back through that again. Right in there. Right? And he has just a, it doesn't show up quite as much on the TV there as it does, but right there there's just a, oh, I got a little touch high. Right there. A little bit of that dark there. A little bit of the mark here. There. That's kind of neat. A few of those marks. And, you know, whether or not how much you put in, that's all up to you. I like to have a bit of that. But that's getting a really good look to him, I think. And without, like that light and dark. Let's take, now we're going to, as we leave this area, everything we paint now is a little bit more simplistic. And I want to get some beiges and some burnt siennas and stuff like that out here. So we're going to paint a little bit more simplistic as we come out of that area here. So his main focus is right in there, and it's done. So everything else is going to be more simplistic here. So let's concentrate on that. And before I get too far, I might want to let's add the light right out here, but I might want to restate that background again like I want it. And then we'll go from there. A little bit of the beige here. There we go. Bit of that dark blue, burnt the blue, and this color in there. Dark, that's nice. Right in there. Right up here. Here we go. Keep that. See, and you can, if you spread out your marks a bit, you get those clumps of hair, which I like. So it's up to you how much you want to add into that. But I kind of like those little clumps there. But make sure you're adding this open medium. That's the ticket for the beautiful hair strokes here. My snoring dogs. Having some dogs snore in the background is also really important. Yeah. Let's get now, you can do the whiskers. I'll show you how to do some of those and stuff, but we'll just get some of this, and some of this angles back here on his face too. So try to follow the fur marks on his face. This is his. There, that's kind of neat. And that meets up with this mark pulling down right here. There, like that. Let's put a little heavier white right into white with that open medium. There we go. Right there like that. That gives a beautiful look to him, I think. Now, let's come in and let's just see. I love to do this stuff with my 3/4. I am most comfortable, and because when I started reading Sargent, and Sargent did everything with a big brush, big as possible, I really painted. I did big roses with it. One of the most popular rose video that's been watched over, like 4 million times now that I did it with I painted the entire rose bouquet with a 3/4 inch brush. I'm very comfortable with it, but you can go to a smaller one. I'm going to use my burnt sienna, a little green, a little bit this, a little bit of the red, and the blue, and I'm going to darken this down, maybe right up under here, and pull down and out. Here, blur that out just a bit. That's where I really want it. I want to go below. I don't want to get this too much up by his nose, but I want to come underneath here and pull some of this down. Now, sometimes I'm doing this on a dry background. Sometimes I will wet the background there as well. But I like this. I'm going to go a little more blue right up in here and just let that kind of take over. And what I'm thinking here right now when I'm doing this is I try to take colors out of him, contrasting colors out of him, and pull it into the background. And so I'm taking some of the colors out of his nose. Now, while that is a little wet, let's take a softer white with some of this, and let's just pull those hair strokes right there, right out here, and get that nice softness to some of that fur in there. Let's even, maybe even push a little bit of that right into the line of the fur. Let's try that. I haven't done this before, so. And just pull, oh, that works. Okay, Dave, remember that one. That worked really nice. Putting that on with a wet stroke. We might go to do some two-brush painting. I used to do that a while ago. So let's take a cooler, thin it out with some extender. Let's put that curved line that we see on him right in there, right? Blur it out a little bit. Now let's take our medium beige and this, and white and some yellow, and we'll pull the smaller strokes out, and boy, that does work really nice. Right through that shadow. That works really nice. Let's put a little heavier right in here. And while that's wet, pull some of those lights. Let's get just a touch lighter. Some open medium here. This might be best to work with 2 3/4 inch brushes. That might work even better. But you got a lot of, up there around his fur up here is a lot of smaller strokes. And so you can emulate that with just this little number 8. Or you do like I like to do is I'm going to switch over, and I can see that, but I'm going to switch over to doing larger strokes. I like larger alla prima strokes, especially as I'm leaving my center of interest here. I like the larger alla prima here. Just alla prima is just real quick, one time through, and I love those types of strokes and fur and stuff here to keep stuff as simplistic as possible. Let's do this. Let's wipe. Let's take some of that blue and violet and burnt sienna here. Let's restate right along this dark. Pull it into him a little bit there. See, I like that. And we might, you know, there's other places like we can try some of that deep right in here. Right up here. Right up in this area here. Pull some of that out, soften some of that, right? Excuse me. Grab some of our light color with that open medium. And see how that you get that little furry edge there? Do you see that? That works really nice. So you don't have to use a small little liner brush to get that. Look at how beautiful that is. But then you could come through a second time and do a softening stroke to push some of that back. Now let's go burnt sienna and some of this. Blue, burnt sienna, and some of this. Thin it out, right? And we have that, you know, up in his whole shoulder, up in this area. Let's just push some of this warm. See, and this is what I want to do. I want to catch these big warm strokes here. Maybe a little bit of the blue into this. Big warm strokes here. And then we'll grab some light here. Whites, lights. And let's just do the big strokes here. Soft. Here. Right like that. Just bigger strokes on him. Instead of doing all those smaller strokes, he has his shoulder kind of coming here. So we might pull that idea of that. Here. Of that shoulder coming down here. So a few angled strokes this way, like that, but some of these pulling down. Right like that. That's kind of neat. So it captures his feeling, but I'm not going to copy all of those little strokes. So I tend to, as I'm leaving the center of interest, I tend to make the marks, his fur marks, larger. That makes sense. I like that. There. Let's build these right up here a bit, right up in here. Bigger. And some of these smaller little bits right in there. That looks pretty darn good. I really like, he is a little bit more gray, not quite as blue as what you see there. He's a little bit more, and over there he's a little bit lighter, and that becomes the question is on that side, do I want to leave this real light dark? I might put more dark down here. Or do I want to take a lighter, softer gray and maybe add some soft movements of the gray right up over here to lighten that side. Yeah, I like that. That's just a little bit. Let's pull through this gray just a bit. But I do like that gray right there being left. So, but that's now it's a real personal opinion here, how much you want to do. You know, a real personal opinion. So I'm going to put a little bit of gray here, just a little bit. Love this big brush. Let's carry a couple marks of that right up through here. So see, you can paint back through it to get some of those grays. It's real pretty. And, you know, I just can't tell you guys just how much fun it is once you start, you see his stuff. It takes practice. It really does take practice. You know, one of the things is I get a lot of comments that are this, oh, that's too hard to do. Oh, this is not easy. I can't do that. And I wrote a comment into our academies and I said, art is not easy. Yeah, you look at when I painted it here, guys, but I've been painting for 40 years. And of course, different types of subject matter and stuff like that. But you see this brush? Do you think twice about picking up a pencil and using it? No, because you've used it so much. So you have to use this so much that it's just as comfortable in your hand as a pencil. And the brush, to me, I've lived half my life with the brush in my hand, right? Painting over half my life. And so it is very, very comfortable to me. And that's all you got to do to make yours just as nice is to, and get that, is just to make that brush comfortable. I'm going to take out just a, now that didn't work, so we'll just pull a little light back in there, right like that. And maybe just try that again. Just a bit of the corner of the brush. There, like that. That worked out pretty nice. Let's whisper out, which is kind of important, some of this hair right out here. Let's just whisper out a little bit. Give some of that whispering here. And it's really easy. This is still wet over there because I put that extender in. Now, you see that angle is there and he comes in more sideways. I should probably come in sideways. So we'll pop that back in this way and we'll come out sideways. More what he is. That is better. There we go. That is a little better there. Fits his features a little bit more. Now, before we get going here too far, let's take some yellow, some of the burnt sienna, some of this gray, some nice open medium. Let's get real casual up in here. Some gray goes right over this. Yellows. Let's tap some lighter yellows. Oh, and so when I'm doing all these last strokes, I'm adding open medium to everything. Right, nice light yellow here. onto that ear, a few little marks right in there. Maybe some of that right in here, pulling down in. Right? So you carry that consistent. I'm going to go to put my 3/4 in the water there. I'm going to rinse out this 8. Once I rinse out, I always go back into a little bit of the extender so I don't add water into what I'm painting. I'll pull a hole because water is your solvent right now. So let's just paint through a little more mottled dark. We'll finish up this ear. A little bit of the dark here. And some of the dark up here. Come pulling down and through here. There we go. Some of that. That's good. That's a good color in there. Now let's just some softer grade white right up there like that, and some little bit of yellow, little grade, not bright here. Fur right in there. Tap this around a bit right in here. Create some of that nice furry little movement here. Just don't try to copy it, just try to emulate it. A little bit more of that dark here. And I think we've got a pretty good idea here for him. A little more burnt sienna and blue. So, what, about an hour and a half or so for this painting? I was planning on 2 hours, so that's not too bad. And I was planning on even faster than that, but you guys kind of put the pressure on me when you say, oh, I can't wait for that wolf. So that kind of puts the pressure on me. I can't screw it up. But then I have to slide into a little bit of what I know to paint it up really nice, and some people were looking forward to it. So, but it's okay. It's all fun, right? This is why we do it. I'll add a few little marks of that dark through there. This is why we do it, guys, to have this fun. This is just fun. And yeah, we're going to make mistakes, but that's okay. Remember, and so you can paint back and forth like this, and that open medium just makes it look like you know what you're doing when you do that. So I like that. It's a little different than what it is on him up there, and this is a little softer on him, so maybe I'll soften off this edge a bit here, blur that out just a bit there. But I like that. I like everything about that. Now the question becomes right down here, and I think I'm going to do it because this is a painting that we're practicing, so we're practicing our look. So I'll take the darker look right down here. Let's see what happens. This will really advance him, but I got to be careful that I don't get this too light down here. So we can use some strong horizontals and verticals there. But what I want to do is I'm going to take some beige open medium, some softer fur strokes here, and soften. So I'll take that white out. I'll soften that. So we'll soften this edge so that this becomes less noticeable. I've got to put a little white in there. I got a little edge from that previous, so a little white will soften that out. There we go, like that. Maybe I could force a little bit of light in there. There, like that. Yeah, that gets him. Now, the final little thing that I would do here, maybe, because I love those little tiny sparks of light that are right above his eye, And they're hard to do. You don't have to do these, but little sparks, little touches that really gives his eye that little spark right there. Not so much on the other side, so I'm going to put one in there, but I'll gray it down just a bit. Just slowly push that mark. Could go a touch lighter. And there we go. Just a little bit of that spark. His catch light there is enough. Maybe a secondary little medium catch light right there. Underneath the nose, up along his lip here, there is a soft little light. Just checking all the places now. Soft little light there on his lip. You don't see it there, but I do see it back up there on him. It's a little straighter right across here, so push that in there, just like that. And I'm going to leave maybe just a little bit of that line. Don't want to make him look too much like he's smiling for the camera there. Here. And yeah, just little marks. Yeah, little bits there coming back in. So I think that's pretty good. Now you could put a few, light hairs and stuff there. I showed you before it was some of the stuff. If you have the white, if you painted within a certain amount of time, I used a little bone here, and you can scratch in, and you can do it on this one, but there's not much dark there, but you could scratch in. See how I just lightly scratch, just looking over there. This is the edge of some of you that watch some of my other videos, this is the edge of a sharpened bone. This is the thigh bone of a cow. So I went to the butcher and got that, and then I sharpened it down and stuff. This is what the Dutch used to use, 300-400 years ago, to add details, veining to flowers and stuff, the sharpened edge of a bone. But you can scratch back through and add a few little bits of his whiskers and stuff like that, which you don't see too much there, but boy, they are pulling up on that one. And so you can pull some through here, just like that. And that's probably about enough. I like him kind of fluffy, furry, and all out there like that. It's up to you. You can make some darker. You can pop him farther forward, but I kind of like all of that. And I didn't, normally on the portrait eyes and stuff, I put that little bit of a cast shadow up there over, which is a shadow from the upper eyelid. And I didn't have to really do that because when I glaze those down, that kind of put that in. So I think overall he looks pretty good. So I hope you enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun with it. About an hour and a half or so. I was going to try to do it in an hour, but you guys put that pressure on me, and I just have to make him a little bit better than just to practice. So anyway, it's a lot of fun. I hope you give him a try. If you have questions or anything, just put them right down there. Help us out by liking the video, please. Share the video. Help us grow our channel. We're trying to keep this as much as possible, as free as possible. So, you can support the channel by going over to our membership. A couple bucks on that membership helps that. 100% of everything we receive from YouTube in advertising or any of that kind of stuff goes right back into this channel. And there's a lot of people that work on this channel that devote their time to it, and we're just trying to give it back. So your support is very, very important to help keep this channel the way we're going, okay? So if you like everything, consider a membership, or at least like the video, share it, get out there, make a comment, and help us get the videos out a little bit further, and we'll show more stuff, okay? Deal? We'll work together on it, okay? Hope you enjoy it. Give it a try. And don't forget, you can go over and click the link. It's in the video description over to our Facebook group. You can go over there, sign up in there, and you can post photos, ask questions. Lots of good people over there, okay? All right. I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye-bye.